(1093) meeting of the United Nations Security Council is hereby called to order. The Security Council will now take the attendance of delegates. Delegates are requested to reply present when their country called. The Security Council will now take the roll call. China.
Present.
France.
Present.
Russia.
Present.
United Kingdom.
Present.
United States.
Present.
India.
Present.
Venezuela.
Present.
Cuba.
Present.
Egypt.
Present.
Colombia.
Present.
Spain.
Present.
Brazil.
Present.
Iran.
Present.
Japan.
Present.
Denmark.
Present.
Call to order 1093rd meeting of the United Nations Security Council is hereby called to order. The Security Council will now take the attendance of delegates. Delegates are requested to reply present when their country called. Distinguished delegates, honorable representatives, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all to today's session of the United Nations Security Council. Agenda announcement: Emergency UN Council meeting on Venezuela and Nicolas Maduro, the President of Venezuela, and his wife Celia Flores, captured by the United States and international reactions. The agenda is adopted if there are no objections. I now invite the Honorable Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, to address the Council.
Mr. President, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to brief the Security Council. We met at a grave time following the 3rd January United States military action in the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. President Nicolas Maduro is being held in New York, accused by US authorities along with his wife Celia Flores of serious criminal offences. I remain deeply concerned that rules of international law have not been respected with regard to the 3rd January military action named Operation Absolute Resolve. Respect for the UNO Charter and all other applicable legal frameworks to safeguard peace and security. Respect for the principles of sovereignty, political independence, and territorial integrity of states. Now I request all representatives to express their views with responsibility and respect for the international law. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the Secretary General for his briefing. Announcement of the speaker list. The Security Council will now proceed. The speaker list. I have on my list the representative of Venezuela, United States, China, India, Russia, UK, France, Colombia, Spain, Egypt, and Cuba. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I request all delegates to strictly follow the time limit. Each delegation will have 90 seconds to make its statement, except USA and Venezuela. I now invite Madam Mancada Acosta, representative of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the floor. I think we need to make an institutional clarification. Mr. President, we note with concern that an attempt is being made to present to the Security Council a supposed representative of civil society, a person whose public career trajectory bears the hallmarks of sustained funding from foreign governments and transnational corporations. This has been the case for years, as well as participation in process of political destabilization and the promotion of institutional breakdown in her own country and violations of international law. Mr. President, on January 3rd, 2026 is a date of profound historical significance, not only for Venezuela, but for the internal system as a whole. On that day, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela was the target of an illegitimate armed attack lacking any legal justification by the government of USA, which included bombing of our territory. Mr. President, Article 2 of 4 of the UN Charter prohibits on the country from using force against another country. The loss of civilian and military lives, the destruction of civilian infrastructure, and the kidnapping of the constitutional president of the Republic, Nicolas Maduro, and the First Lady, Celia Flores. Mr. President, Venezuela comes before the Council today with a deep conviction that international peace can only be sustained if international law is respected without exception, without double standards, and without selective interpretations. Mr. President, threat of use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state as enshrined in Article 2, Paragraph 4 and a violation of the duty to settle disputes by peaceful means. Mr. President, Venezuela is the victim of these attacks because of its natural resources. Our country's oil, energy, strategic resources and geopolitical position have historically been factors of greed and external pressure. When force is used to control resources, impose governments or redesign states, we are faced with worst practices like colonialism and neo-colonialism. Thank you, Mr. President and the members of the Council. Thank you.
I thank Madam Mancada Acosta for her statement. I now give the floor to Mr. Mike Waltz, representative of the United States of America.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished members of the Council, Excellencies. Mr. President, the United States took this military action to enforce long-standing criminal indictments against Nicolas Maduro for serious transnational crimes, including narco-trafficking. This was a targeted law enforcement operation, not an act of war and not an occupation of Venezuela. Our objective was to hold an individual accountable under the rule of law after all diplomatic options were exhausted. Mr. President, the United States would not allow the Western Hemisphere to be used as a base of operation for our nation's adversaries. Our President Trump offered Maduro multiple off-ramps. He tried to de-escalate. Maduro refused to take them. Mr. President, the United States government had indicted Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores in a US federal court on serious criminal charges, including allegations of narco-terrorism, drug trafficking, and conspiracy to import cocaine into the United States. Mr. President, the United States is not war with Venezuela or its people. Nicolas Maduro and his networks posed a serious threat to US national security. Therefore, the US claimed its action was an act of self-defense under Article 51 of UN Charter, gives a country the right to self-defense. Mr. President, our President Donald Trump stated that narcotics trafficking linked to Nicolas Maduro directly harmed the health, safety and lives of the American people. This led to drug addiction, crime and deaths among US citizens. Thank you, Mr. President. I thank the members of the Council.
I thank Mr. Ambassador Walls for his statement. I now invite Madam Levite, representative of China, to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President and Excellencies. Mr. President, China firmly opposes any actions that violates the sovereignty, independence and territorial integrity of Venezuela. The use of force or unilateral actions without authorization from the Security Council are a clear violation of the principles of the United Nations Charter. Mr. President, military means are not the solution to problems. Did these actions bring peace and stability? The international community sees this clearly. No country can act as world's police. China calls all parties to resolve disputes peacefully through dialogue and diplomacy. Mr. President, China calls on the United States to respect Venezuela's sovereignty and solve issues through dialogue according with the UN Charter. Thank you, Mr. President and members of the Council.
I thank Madam Ambassador for her statement. I now invite Madam Ambassador Ananya Sharma, representative of India, to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished delegates, I wish to thank you for giving India the opportunity to speak on this important issue. Mr. President, India emphasizes the importance of respecting the sovereignty, independence and territorial integrity of all nations. Unilateral actions that undermine this principle risk destabilizing the region and weakening the authority of United Nations. Mr. President, India calls all the parties to exercise restraint and resolve disputes through dialogues and diplomacy in accordance with the UN Charters. With Mr. President, India expressed deep concern over the recent action in Venezuela. We call all the Security Council to play its role in promotion peace and constructive engagement and protest civilization. Thank you.
Thank Madam Ambassador for her statement. I now invite Madam Ambassador Ivanova, representative of Russia, to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The representative of Russia condemned the US operation as a violation of Venezuela's sovereignty and warned that such actions risk a return to an era of lawlessness and domination by force, contrary to the UN Charter. Mr. President, we cannot allow the United States to proclaim itself as some kind of a supreme judge, which alone bears the right to invade any country. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Russia for the statement. I now invite Madam Ambassador Johnson, representative of United Kingdom, to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President and member of the Council. Mr. President, the United Kingdom was not involved in the recent military action in Venezuela. We emphasize the importance of upholding international law and the UN Charter. Mr. President, we are still establishing the facts of the situation but reiterate transition in Venezuela that reflects the will of its people. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of United Kingdom for the statement. I now invite Madam Ambassador Martin, representative of France, to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President and Excellency. Mr. President, the military operation that led to the capture of Nicolas Maduro violates the principle of not restoring to force which underpins international law. Mr. President, France emphasizes a peaceful democratic transition led by Venezuelans themselves rather than imposed by external military action. Only the Venezuela people can decide their future. Thank you, Mr. President. I am the member of Council.
I thank Madam Ambassador for her statement. I now invite Madam Ambassador Gomez, representative of Colombia, to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President and Excellencies. Mr. President, the actions remain as of the worst interference in Latin American and the Caribbean politics and are threat to our region as zone of peace to the commitment to resolve our differences peacefully through dialogue and negotiation or other forms of peaceful settlement in full accordance with international law. Thank you, Mr. President, Member of Council.
I thank the representative of Colombia for the statement. I now invite Madam Ambassador Martinez, representative of Spain, to take the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente. Distinguidos miembros del Consejo Designated. Señor presidente, la situación reconciliada con la captura reportada del presidente Nicolas Maduro tiene profundas implicaciones para la paz y la seguridad internacional. Señor presidente, reconocemos las graves acciones presentadas contra el presidente Maduro, pero con la USO de la fragilidad más allá de las fronteras de un Estado separado de las consulas principios de la Carta de las Naciones Unidas y el respeto and all universal sovereignty laws estados. Gracias, señor presidente.
I thank Madam Ambassador for her statement. I now invite Madam Ambassador Hassan, a representative of Egypt, to take the floor.
शुक्रान सईद आलरस इन्ना खबद आल विलायत आल मुताहिदा अला निकोलस मदुरो यतीरो फलाकन जदीदा हौला सियादत आ दुआल व अहकम आल क़ानून आ दुआली शुक्रान आल सईद आलरस वहमा अहमियत आल मुहासबा यजीबु आन ततीम हदीही आल इजराएत मिन खिलाल आल इलायत आ दुआलिया वालेस बी तड़कुल अहादी शुक्रान आल सईद आलरस नाडो इला तहक्कुम आन नफ्स वाहल सिल्मी यहफस आसिल्म व आलम आदवाली शुक्रान आल सईद आलरस.
I thank Madam Ambassador for her statement. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The Security Council will now proceed to consider the draft resolution entitled The Release of Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celias Flores, any sponsoring country or supported country to the Venezuela. Briefly reads the key points in the draft resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Emphasizing the importance of peaceful settlement of disputes in accordance with Article 33 of the UN Charter calls for the immediate release of President Nicolas Maduro. Thank you, Mr. President and Excellencies.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador of Cuba. The Security Council will now proceed to vote on the draft resolution a resolution is adopted if it receives at least 9 affirmative votes and non-veto from any permanent member. Mr. Ladies and gentlemen, here are some rules regarding voting process on the draft resolution. Only 15 Security Council members can vote. 5 permanent members have veto power. Non-permanent members do not have veto power. If any one of the 5 permanent members votes against, the resolution fails, even if others support it. Abstaining by permanent 5 members does not count as a veto. Voting is done by raising hands, not by placards. Observers and invited countries are not permitted to vote. If adopted, the draft resolution is adopted. If rejected due to veto or insufficient votes, the draft resolution has not been adopted. Ladies and gentlemen, the Security Council will now proceed to vote on the draft resolution. I request all the members to be present in the chamber for the voting. Members are requested to take their seats as the council prepares to vote. Voting will be conducted by roll call. Delegates are requested to be ready to cast their votes. We are now moving to the voting process. Members, please be ready to vote. The council will now vote. Only Security Council members may cast their votes. Each country votes one of 3 ways. Number 1, in favor. Number 2, against. Number 3, abstain. Now roll call voting process. Agenda for roll call voting process. Listen once again, ladies and gentlemen. Agenda for roll call voting process. Draft resolution on the release of Nicolas Maduro, the President of Venezuela, and his wife Celia Flores. During roll call voting, one country speaks at a time. United Kingdom.
Abstain.
France.
Abstain.
Next, Russia.
In favor.
China.
In favor.
Next, United States of America.
Against.
Next, Brazil.
Abstain.
Next, Cuba.
In favor.
Next country to participate voting process, Colombia.
In favor.
So next country, Venezuela.
In favor.
Next country to participate in the voting process, Iran.
In favor.
Next country, Spain.
In favor.
Next country to participate in voting process, Egypt.
Abstain.
Next country to participate in the voting process, Japan.
Abstain.
Next country to participate in voting process, India.
In favor.
So next and last country to participate in voting process, Denmark.
In favor.
I now invite Honorable Secretary General Antonio Guterres kindly announcement the results.
Check minimum required votes. A Security Council resolution needs at least 9 votes in favor. So here 9 votes in favor, condition is met. Okay. Check for veto. A resolution fails only if a permanent member votes against. In this case, only one vote against. In this case, one permanent member voted against, so a veto has been exercised. Role of abstains. Abstains do not matter once a veto is used. Even with 9 votes in favor, the resolution cannot pass. Official result announcement. The result of the voting is as follows: 9 votes in favor, 1 vote against, 5 votes abstains. According to the voting results, the draft resolution has not been adopted due to a veto by a permanent member. Thank you.
I thank you, Honorable Secretary General of United Nations, for the official results announcement. End of the session. Ladies and gentlemen, the voting process is complete. This concludes the meeting of the Security Council. I thank all members for their constructive participation. The meeting is adjourned.
This mock session gave me a practical knowledge of how international diplomacy works, and it was informative and very interesting. I learned how debates are conducted in the state council and how decisions are made through voting.
Before, I don't know how the elections of UNO is conducting in the world, but in this program I learned more knowledge about the UNO elections are conducting, and I gained more knowledge. Thanks.
From this session, I learned that how the countries are participating and how they're discussing about the country's development or anything. So it gave more knowledge to us, and we are actively participated in this session. So we are happy for this participating in this session. Thank you, sir.
This mock secretary council helped me to understand the structure and working of the United Nations. It was a valuable learning experience. Thank you.